Does Warhammer lore matter anymore? And for that matter, does any lore for tabletop war games matter? Is it important?
All that matters now is the story.
Yeah, I think so. And I have some evidence to back it up. So let's talk about it. When I first started this channel, it was all about tabletop games and D&D and things like that, things that I enjoyed playing. And part of the natural process of that is kind of always thinking about how you would do it differently. Until I got to the point where I thought, well, how would I make my own tabletop game? Which has evolved into me trying to do that. Now, I'm still a long way away, but there are little things that I can kind of focus on. And so as I've been thinking about this, I've been thinking about what makes a game good and what companies are doing that right now. And of course I focus on Warhammer because regardless of what anyone says, it's the chief. It's the big one out there, especially when it comes to tabletop wargaming. So I was looking at Warhammer and I asked myself, what makes a game fun? And I came up with 5 things, 5 reasons that people play a game. And the things that I came up with are, 1, it's fun. People want to play it because it's fun. Right? 2, it's competitive. There's always going to be that part where people want to show that they're better at something than you are. And so they want to compete. So a game has to be competitive. Is it easy to get into? I know so many people that have just thrown Magic the Gathering down because I don't understand it. It's too hard. Or board games or things like that just because they're not easy to get into. So a game's got to be easy to get into, right? It's got to be a good use of their time as well. No one's going to want to play a game that's just a waste of time every time they do it. It's got to be something that they enjoy doing. It's that hobby. It's what takes that part of your brain up where you're building a deck, where you're thinking of what you could do differently. It's got to have that.
Why are we doing this?
Good use of time. You feel like it's worth your time while you're playing it or preparing for it, especially when it comes to painting miniatures and stuff, right? And then the last thing that I came to was the lore. The lore, the story. It pulls people in. Okay? So, I started asking myself, does Games Workshop have these things? Is it fun? Depends on who you ask, right? Some people think so, some people don't. But for the sake of the argument of what I'm doing today, we'll say that a good chunk do and a good chunk don't. Especially when we're talking about 40K, it seems almost like more people think it's less fun than any of their other games. And especially when you get into the tournament side of that. So rolling that into the second one, is it competitive? I posted a video 2 weeks ago completely about whether or not Warhammer is fun. And the number one thing that people came back with is, sure, if you're playing it with your friends, it's fun. But if you're playing it competitively,
it's a nightmare.
Not so much. So, 1 and 2, Warhammer's kind of on the fence for both of those already. Okay? Easy to get into. This is one that I will flat out say no. Warhammer is not an easy thing to get into. If you don't believe me, talk to anyone who's tried to get a friend to play. For some weird reason, it's like D&D, where people are just, I don't know, I don't think it's something for me, I don't think it's for me. And it doesn't even require you to use your imagination like D&D does. But overall, not easy to get into. So, is it a good use of your time? This is one that I'll come forward and I'll say that I think it is. I think that Warhammer is a great use of your time because you're building, you're painting, you're doing all these things that use that artistic side of you that I believe is important to use. And anyone who's painted a miniature has sat down and looked at it and just thought, look at this thing that I just did.
I'm amazing.
And there's that sense of completion. There's that sense of you did it, And so I think Warhammer has that. But I think every tabletop game out there that has good models has that as well. 3D printing makes that even easier for most people. So, we're kind of wishy-washy on just about everything until it gets to this last one, the story, the lore. Games Workshop has the Black Library, and the Black Library has over 200 books. I don't know the exact number, but it's well over 200 books. And these aren't tiny little books. These are full-length novels. So is lore important? It's important enough to make 200 books about. people just keep buying them. And they have special editions, they have leather bounds, they have anything that people want when it comes to the books, you can generally get. And they're good books. I don't want to say they're all good, because some of them are not, and some of them are just a slog to get through. But generally, any faction that you support, that you like, you can find books for, and you can read heroic stories of the characters that your army is made from. And that, I think, is why people read them. You know, you put all this time into this army, the salamanders. You want to know what the salamanders do. What makes them so special? Well, here's this book that tells you about them, that tells you about their Primarch. But what's the Primarch? He's not in the game. I've never even seen this Primarch model. Well, guess what? One day, he just might be. And that right there just keeps people excited. And just... You don't have to take my word for it. Okay? I was looking up on YouTube today, content creators, people that share Warhammer lore. And I was kind of comparing them to people who do battle reports and people who actually play the game, and even painters and content creators that way. But there are a ton of channels out there that are just about lore, that have hundreds of thousands of subscribers. Okay, there's Major Kill, there's Wes Hammer, there's Sandman of Terra. Okay, these guys all have way up there in the 100,000s. A channel that's only been around for a few months, Crack Duck. Okay, he went from 1,000 subscribers to almost 50,000 in weeks, because honestly, his content is amazing. And if you haven't checked him out, I'll put a link to him down below. He's amazing, he's funny, he's artistic, he's everything that lore should be. So check him out. But people love the lore, so much so that they subscribe in the millions just to hear it. So, is it important? Yeah.
You can't deny it.
So, do you think retconning and changing the lore like they have been doing the last couple of years is smart? Is it getting to a bigger part of the community when they make the changes that they're doing? Or is it affecting them in a negative way? We've all seen what Disney has done to Star Wars over the last couple of years, and there's a part of me that's afraid that that could happen to Warhammer. I feel like that's why Henry Cavill wanted to be part of the Warhammer project, because he wanted to make sure that it stayed true to that and that it survived, because he wanted to keep it the way that it was supposed to be. Is that going to happen? I don't know. But I'm hopeful that it will, and I'm hopeful that it keeps going straight, because lore is important, at least to me. Which is why, for the game that I'm creating, Pulsegate, I have started putting together some lore. And if you have any interest in that, any interest in seeing the world that I'm trying to make, and maybe helping me make that, being a part of that process, next week's video is going to be about my grim dark magic system that I'm making for my game. And I love it. I think it's great. I think it's gory. I think it's what Warhammer once was. And what I mean by that is this. When I first got into Warhammer, this is what I read. This is the first thing that I saw. And it's what kept me coming back. It is the 41st millennium. For more than 100 centuries, the Emperor has sat immobile on the golden throne of Earth. He is the master of mankind by the will of the gods, and master of a million worlds by the might of his inexhaustible armies. He is a rotting carcass, writhing invisibly with power from the dark age of technology. He is the carrion lord of the Imperium, for whom 1,000 souls are sacrificed every day, so that he may never truly die. That's only a small portion of the text. You should read it if you haven't. But when I read that as a 9-year-old kid, the only thing that came to my mind was, this is the coolest thing ever.
Oh, they got me!
And you've got some explaining to do. Which is what's the beauty of lore, which is what makes it great. At least that's what I think. And if you think I'm wrong, please let me know below. And if you know of a game that has incredible lore, tell me about it. I want to put it on this channel. I want to show it off to the world. I shot this entire video yesterday, and I hated it because it turned into this video where all I did was just crap on Games Workshop. Because honestly, in the world of YouTube, that's what gets you views, and I hated it. And I know you might be saying I still picked on them today. Believe me, way less, way less. But I didn't want this channel to be about that. I never wanted it to be about that. I wanted it to be about people like me. People like you who are out there creating their own worlds, whether it's in Warhammer, D&D, or anything else. And just want a little bit of help, or just want to know that they're right on the right path. Because that's what we're about here. And if you like that, I promise to do more about that. And I promise to not just do what I think is going to get me views, but to do what I think is important and helpful. And if you like that, like, subscribe, stick around. Like I said, next week's video is a fun one. I'm not a great artist, but I'm going to try and show you what I'm envisioning. And I hope that as the time goes by and the years go by, that this game becomes real and that the input that you help give me makes it the best game that it can be. So, stick around. And as always, thank you for being here. And remember, don't spend so much time building your world, reading the lore of your world, that you forget to spend some time in it. Until next time.